Hey guys, it's time for our next little lesson for the week. For this week in English, you are to continue doing 3 Reading Plus and your 2 vocabulary and 1 to 3 iReady lessons. If you are behind on your Reading Plus or can't do iReady, or if you made some reds or had a hard time with some of your Reading Pluses, you can just supplement by doing some extra Reading Plus lessons. This week for social studies, the title of our lesson is Join or Die. Sounds a little morbid, which is right up my alley, I have to say. I like that. But last week we were discussing like the events and the motivations that were leading up to the French and Indian War. This week it's about how the colonies were trying to become like one government. They were trying to form like one like almost like a country but still under the British government, to be able to work together and plan together. Because up until this point it was each state had their own government, their own rules, their own laws, and you could go from state to state to state. One state might kick you out because they don't like you, and I think you remember one time we learned that in Massachusetts they hung one woman because she wanted to be a Quaker. So I say state is the colonies. Each colony had their own rules, their own laws. So this one is about how the colonies were starting to try to come together to be one government, one set of rules, one set of laws. Now, did it work? We'll see. But join or die. Prior to George Washington being sent to the Forks and Fort Duquesne, remember French and Indian War going on, he's doing all this fighting stuff, there were a number of intellectuals and government officials who had formulated and published several different plans that would bring the colonies of North America under one central government. So a bunch of people were like, we should all be under like one law, okay? Colonists saw the need to organize together in an effort to defend the common interests of the colonies from the British government. After Washington's unsuccessful attempt to defend Fort Necessity, it was urgent that the colonies would cooperate with each other, as they were likely to come under or attack or invasion from the French in the upcoming French and Indian War. So before the French and Indian War, there were people already thinking, we should all come together and be one. But then after George Washington had his one and only loss at Fort Necessity, where he had to surrender to the French, they were really like, oh, we really need to come together. We're fixing to have to fight off the French. They're going to attack us or we're going to attack them. We need to make sure we can work together, and we are together. Because, if we're a bunch of different separate colonies that don't even work together, how are we going to fight the French, During the summer of 1754, representatives from several colonies met in Albany, New York. Prior to the meeting, Benjamin Franklin, the representative of Pennsylvania, had written to some of the representatives hinting towards uniting the colonies under one government. These representatives from Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire had originally been ordered by the British government in London to meet in an effort to develop a treaty between the colonists and the Iroquois tribe that would define their relationship and bring peace with one another. Once Albany Congress began, the representatives voted unanimously to discuss the possibility of becoming a union. After several debates, the Albany Congress adopted the Albany Plan on July 10th. So all the colonies, except for Georgia and Delaware, met together and they decided we need to be all one government, and they voted, and all of them voted to be one government. The Albany Plan outlined that the union would be between all the colonies except for Delaware and Georgia because they weren't there. Each colony would select members for the Grand Council that would represent the interests of the colonies. The British government would be represented by a President General, and each branch would come together to resolve disputes with the Native Americans and other European powers throughout the colonies. So their plan was to have one big government with representatives from each colony so they could come together and discuss issues and work together. The Albany Plan wasn't so much about ending the control of the British and the colonies. It was more about protecting the interests of the colonies as a whole. because they wanted to work together to help each other out. Because, you know, if they're all separate, they can be more easily defeated or taken advantage of. Even though the plan had support from the colonial representatives in the Albany Congress, the plan did not become a reality. Many of the colonial governments sensed that this plan would limit their authority or territorial rights. They voted against it and rejected the plan. The Albany Plan had failed to gain approval in the colonies and was never submitted to the British Crown for approval. So while the Albany Plan was not passed, because several people in all the different colonies were like, wait a minute, if we stop being several separate colonies and become, you know, one government, we might lose some territories or lands, which means we lose money, so they voted against it. This was kind of one of the first attempts to unite the colonies, and it didn't work. But it's starting to show the mindset of the colonies at the time. They're realizing, okay, we need to work together, we need to come together, or we are going to be taken advantage of. And this is sort of kind of like the precedent to them coming together when they decided to declare independence from the British government. In 1776, you know, Declaration of Independence, woohoo, all right. And Benjamin Franklin was a part of this, and he was also a part of the Declaration of Independence and us declaring independence from Great Britain in 1776. Benjamin Franklin was kind of a crazy guy. He was a very smart guy, and he had a bunch of ideas, and he was a very political person. In fact, what we're going to look at next is a political cartoon he drew. This was about the Albany Plan, about people coming together. The name of this political cartoon is Join or Die. Now, it's a snake that's been cut up into different pieces. And this piece is South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and New England. And what he's saying here is that this snake that's been cut into pieces, that's all the different colonies, they need to come together, become one whole snake again, or they're going to die. Because, you know, if you're cut up into pieces, you're going to die. You have to be one whole body. And that's what he was saying about the Albany Plan. He was saying that the colonies, we need to come together, work together, or we're going to die. We're going to be taken advantage of, either from the French attacking us, the Native Americans, or even eventually the British government. Now, you may think it's weird because a snake can't be put back together once it's been cut into pieces, it's going to die. But based on source 2, in that era, during Benjamin Franklin's era, there was a myth that a snake that had been cut into pieces could come back to life if it was put together before sunset. So he made that cartoon based off of a myth. Back then, hey, if a snake is cut into pieces, if you put it back together before sunset, it'll come back to life. And that's what he based his political cartoon off of. Now, the myth may not have been true, but it was very effective in the cartoon. It made people start thinking, you know, maybe he's right. Maybe we need to work together, come together, if we're going to survive and flourish and succeed as the colonies. Source 3 is what he had written with his political cartoon. The confidence of the French in this undertaking seems well grounded on the present disunited state of the British colonies and the extreme difficulty of bringing so many different governments and assemblies to agree in any speedy and effective measures for our common defense and security, while our enemies have the great advantage of being under one direction with one council and one purse. What he's saying here is that the French have an advantage. The French is under one government, one rule, one law, one treasury. They're all working together. They're fighting together. They have the advantage. The colonies, we're all separate. We're not together. He's saying we need to come together, or they're obviously going to beat this because they have it all together. They're working together. How can we fight separately against a nation that's together? But Benjamin Franklin, he was a little bit ahead of his time, very smart, and he got people in the colonies thinking and preparing that mindset of, maybe we should be together. Maybe we should fight against common enemies, and have common goals. And it started that whole, maybe we shouldn't be a part of the British government. He was a little bit of a rebel, Benjamin Franklin was. Now, it's only 3 sources. Next is your questions. Now, the first 4 are all based off of source 1. So, where are you going to find your answers? Source 1. Alright? First question, using source 1, describe why you think Benjamin Franklin represented the colonies as a snake. That's a little bit of an opinion question. Remember, you answer using the RAP method, R-A-P, restate the question, answer the question, and prove the question. So, I think Benjamin Franklin represented the colonies as a snake because, I know this because, or I think this because. Alright, restate it, answer it, prove it. The second question, describe why you think the snake is cut into pieces. Based on your knowledge of the colonies, how is source 1 an accurate representation of the colonies in 1754? And then the fourth question, based on source 1, why did Benjamin Franklin put the words join or die in the cartoon? So these first 4 questions, they're based off source 1, and they're also based off what you think, like based off the reading at the beginning, based off what you think from that, what you know about history, and what is going on in source 1. What do you think? What is source 1 showing you? Alright? Then there's the next 4 questions. The next 2 are about source 2, so you'll find your answers in source 2. Based on source 2, why did Benjamin Franklin use the snake in the illustration? Why did he use it? Second one, using source 2, what message is Benjamin Franklin trying to represent by using this image? And then the last 2, well, the next one is based on source 3, so you'll go to source 3, find your answer. Based on source 3, what advantages of being under one government does Benjamin Franklin express in his writings in his newspaper that was next to the cartoon? And then the last question is based on everything, what we read, the sources, and what we know about history. Based on the sources and the text, why is the Albany Plan important to the development of the United States? Alright, that is our lesson for this week, Join or Die. I happen to like it a little bit, but I like political cartoons. In fact, you could probably ask your parents to show you some current political cartoons. You can find them in the newspapers almost every day. Political cartoons have been a part of history for as long as people have been printing paper, alright? And they can give you some really good insight, or at least the author's insight, as to how they view the politics of the government of that day that it was made. I love you guys. I miss y'all. I know y'all are going to do awesome on this. And y'all have a good time. And bye-bye.